You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Hey, glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your host, Keith Wheeler.
And Nuria Colby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today, we're going to talk about whether we should translate our books. So is that something you've done before, Keith?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I've had a lot of people ask me, should I get my books translated? And what are your thoughts on getting your books translated?
My thoughts have slightly changed recently, and I'll tell you why. Before AI, I was saying to people, yes, get your books translated. Make sure that you get a person to translate it. Don't do Google Translate.
Right.
For obvious reasons, because Google Translate was absolutely terrible. It just didn't make any sense at all. Yeah. And I've translated my own books because I speak German and Spanish, so I was able to, and I used to teach those as languages, so I feel confident that my level of, I was an interpreter at one point, so, and I did translations, so as a job. So I felt quite confident to translate my books, and I've done that, and my books that I've translated into Spanish are actually selling really well in the US. So obviously, there's a big Spanish-speaking market there. So I was really happy because I didn't know at first. I thought, is it worth it? Will I sell many? So I do sell a few of my German books, but they sell mainly in Germany.
In Germany, right.
But I found that the Spanish translations were really worth doing because of the market in the US. And I translated them myself, but I would say that if anybody wanted to go down that route, they can definitely do it. I would definitely say, yes, go ahead and do it. And it's worthwhile as long as it's a professional translation.
Agreed.
Though the reason I've kind of changed a little bit is because of AI. And AI, I have to say, I hate to say it because I know there's a lot of controversy and it's not always the best tool for certain things, but I've translated some chapters with AI and it's actually pretty good. I can't deny that it's completely different to Google Translate. It has done a pretty good job. But saying that, I wouldn't rely on it without getting someone to check it.
Agreed.
And I think that is really important because I've seen some books where they're not even translated and the English was just really terrible. But I've also, I've also seen books that have been translated and they're really bad translations. So I think whatever you do, just make sure that you get someone to check it, someone who knows what they're doing, a professional. And yeah, I can really recommend translating books, definitely. So. Yeah,
I agree. The books that I have translated, not myself, but I've had translated for me.
Yeah.
Those have done, especially like you said, translating in Spanish, have done really well here in the States. But also don't forget that you can, sell them abroad, even if it's not the actual country. Like, for example, German, like you said, is selling really well in Germany, but there are other places in the world where people who speak German may be residing. Yeah. And so that's one of the limitations I've seen a lot of people unintentionally put on their own business is they don't, I talk about publishing wide and, they're automatically thinking of, being on, Draft to Digital and all these other places, but also being in multiple countries, make sure that, you understand that there are people all over the world that speak all different languages and your potential customers are everywhere. So you should have your books everywhere.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I can't stress enough what you said about whether you translate it yourself or you have AI translated or you have, a human being translated. You always want to have ideally someone who is a fluent speaker of that language to review it.
Yeah.
Whether, like, because I mean, you could hire somebody off of, Upwork or Fiverr or whatever to do the translations, but you don't know how they're doing it. Are they just doing it through AI as well? So you really want to get somebody to review it that does speak it fluently, because it's not just a matter of translating the words, it's the syntax that it's in. And, it's something that, what, like you said, AI has come a long way and is able to do a pretty darn good job. But especially depending on the languages that you're translating it into, it may be more or less accurate than other languages. So you definitely want to do your due diligence, because I'll tell you, nothing is worse than whether you spend your own time like you did translating it yourself, or money hiring somebody else to do it, and then you end up getting negative reviews because the quality is bad.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of every single product page on Amazon, there's a report button, and someone can not just leave you a bad review, but they can actually report it as bad quality, and then Amazon can take it down.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
not just having bad reviews, but actually having that book taken down. And if you do that for a lot of books, or maybe you have one book, but you've got, you've had it translated 5 different times. Well, if they were all translated poorly and you didn't do your due diligence and get it, quality checked, and all 5 of them get reported, you could actually end up getting your account banned, because, Amazon cares, number one, about their customer experience. And so you need to make sure that before you publish a book, that you make sure that it's the best quality, both a book that you publish in your native language, whether it's English or whatever, or as well as books that you get translated.
Absolutely. I can't stress that point enough. And something you said earlier was, I think that's really important, because a lot of people ask me, oh, so if I translate my book into Spanish, I'll just go in the Spanish market. Or if I translate my book into German, I'll just go to Amazon Germany. And the answer to that is no, just go on all marketplaces, publish on all marketplaces, because there are plenty of German speaking people living in the US or in Spain or wherever. So, it would actually be nice. I mean, when I first came over to this country, I couldn't find any books easily in German, which was my first language then, or in Spanish. But if that was now, if I had just moved to this country now, I would have my pick of books on Amazon in all different languages. So it's a really nice thing to be able to have that. And I think for that reason alone, you should publish on all marketplaces, definitely. Yeah.
And it's free.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of the few platforms where listing something is free of charge. Yeah. And what you said about the quality, absolutely. Just because if you do get someone to translate it on Fiverr or wherever, like you said, you don't know how that person has translated it in the first place. What's their knowledge? How are they qualified to translate that? And I don't know where you could find someone. Maybe Upwork is a better platform to look for something like that, or maybe go to a platform that specializes in translations. So that would be probably the best place to go to.
Yeah, I've gone through Upwork, and I haven't tried Fiverr. I would say a couple of things I would look for is, one, obviously, they'll list what languages they speak in, as well as whether they're fluent or basic, but also just, and I've said this before, just read how they wrote their own bio, and the gigs that they've done, and see how is their English, or depending on what language you're interested in. If they, even if they speak fluent Spanish, for example, if their English isn't that great, then how well are they going to understand what your book is if it's written in English to translate it?
Yeah.
So you want to keep those things in mind. And just like I say, anytime you're reaching out to a freelancer, reach out to them before you hire them. There's always a contact me button reach out to them, tell them exactly what you're looking for, ask them for what their experience is. Just flat on that, tell them this is what I'm looking for. Is this something you think you can handle? What is your experience doing this? Make it, an actual conversation going back and forth, because not only will they give you answers, but you can also read into the answers that they give. How well are they articulating what they're trying to say? Because their bios might be great, but that could have been written by AI. That could have been something that they spent, hours tweaking to get just right. Whereas if you're just having a natural conversation with them, they're probably not putting that amount of effort into it. So you can really see how well they speak and can understand what you're asking.
Absolutely. And because I think anyone who speaks two different languages knows that different languages also have different amounts of words. Like there are a lot more words in the German language than there are in the English language. Therefore, there's more, you can nuance things much more in different languages. And certain things are, we used to call, well, they're still called that, false friends, where a word is very similar in two languages, but can mean two completely different things. And a lot of people make a mistake there when they translate things. They are using that language, which gives the whole sentence they're using a particular word which gives the whole sentence a different meaning to the one intended. And also because just because you can write in a language, that doesn't automatically make you a good writer. And it's the same for another language. You do have to have that, I don't know, I mean, some people, we all have a different tone of voice. Different people express themselves in a different way. And someone may be quite poetic, or someone may be quite straightforward, or there are all different ways. And sometimes that's lost in translation. When somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing translates something, they may have translated the correct words, but they haven't translated the feeling behind the written word. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, I completely agree. And because it's just something as simple as the way it's written. They, like you said, they might be using with most languages, there's more than one word that correlates with that, and again, like you said, the tone can, make a big difference, so the way I write, especially my nonfiction books, I write very informally, use slang words and things like that. So getting that translated would be a lot more difficult than something where it's more of, one of my more nonfiction or fiction books that are, more traditional as far as like the way it's written. And so, yeah, you definitely want to make sure that, and again, when you're talking to them, explain that to them. You may just think, hey, it's a book that I've written, but give them an idea of what the book's about, what the tone is that you've written in there. And so they can get a good idea as to what is expected of them if they do take on this, this particular gig.
So there's also things you have to bear in mind is when you use expressions, and if you are getting AI to translate something, it may or may not work. For example, that expression we use, putting your eggs in one basket. If you translate that word for word into another language, that doesn't make sense, because the other language might have another expression for that meaning. And my worry is that if anyone uses AI, it might translate it word for word. But actually, I tried it out with something, and I can't remember what the phrase was, and it actually translated it with another phrase that had the same meaning but made sense. So that's when I thought, this is actually quite clever, and it does know how to translate. But even so, I wouldn't quite trust it just yet. I would absolutely get it checked by somebody, because if you make a big mistake in a translation, it really shows. And I think it's reasons to shut your account, because that would be such a big thing in my view. If you translate a book in the wrong way, that would be quite a big mistake, I think. I don't know if you feel that way, but I'm
I
sure you
do.
do.
Yeah, I do. It's one thing to kind of cut corners
Mm,
and when it comes to certain areas, but you're talking about the actual content, that what people are paying for.
yeah.
And so you want to make sure that you put your best foot forward, not just for Amazon, not just for that book, but for your brand. And
Yeah.
so you really want to, and I'm not saying you have to pay a ton of money. Perfect example is like you were saying, maybe using AI, but then having a human being proofread it
Mm,
that is fluent in that, because
yeah.
proofreading in general will be less expensive
Yeah.
than hiring them to actually do the translations. That
Mm,
said, it depends on how good the translations are, because you could try to go cheap and get AI to translate it, and then you hire somebody to proofread it, but they find so many issues proofreading it that has to be rewritten anyway,
mm,
and then you are spending more money. So again, make sure that you know what you're getting into. But I absolutely, the question, should I get my book translated? I would say absolutely.
mm,
Maybe, probably not into every single language, but especially wherever your books are the most prominent, where you're getting the most success. Start with, like, if you're in Amazon.com, you're in the US, then start with Spanish, start with, maybe Italian, maybe French, maybe German. Those are the ones that I've done for my books, especially my children's books. And so, again, find out, I mean, you can a quick internet search will tell you uh what are the percent of um you know foreign speakers in such and such a country,
yeah.
and you can very easily find that out. And then, like you said, with Amazon, you can have your books in multiple countries. So obviously, if you're having it translated in Italian, have it in Italy, but also there's a huge amount of Italians that speak Italian here in the United States, and don't overlook that. And especially just all the other European countries.
Yeah.
People travel. People, I mean, think of all the different countries that you've been in and the different languages you speak.
Mm, absolutely. And I think when we talk about books in general, we kind of think of non-fiction or novels, but actually you can translate your low content books as
I was
well.
just going to say that.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And that is a lot easier, because sometimes if it's a planner, for example, it is easier to translate a planner than a novel, because
Hmm.
there's a set way of doing things, or set there's only such an amount of words you're going to have in a
Right.
planner, and they tend to be repeated as well. So it's a lot easier to translate low content books to fiction or
Hmm.
non-fiction, but you do have to be just as careful, I would say.
Agreed.
And not only do you have to be careful with how you translate the language, but also how you translate the way you write dates, for example, because that's
Right.
different in many countries, or, all these different things that vary from country to country, which is not just the language,
Right.
but it's the outlook of things, or the way things are written. Like
Right.
in the US, I think you still use metro. Is it well, we call it imperial, but you probably call it something else.
We call it standard. Yeah.
Standard. Okay.
Right.
So, and in the UK, we used to use imperial. Now we use metric. So,
Metric. Right.
it's all about adapting to that country, not just to the language, but also to how they think and how they feel and how they work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. And another thing to keep in mind is some countries actually read right to left.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so you might even have to reformat your book
Yeah.
to accommodate that.
Yeah.
One thing that I don't want to forget to mention is your book cover. I typically will suggest, if you're putting something you're translating it to a different language, keep your cover as consistent as possible with that original, and then just make it somewhere clear that it's in a different language.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, you may have to change the, translate the actual title that's on your cover. So you might have to get a new cover done, but you want it to be as consistent with the original as possible. One, because it helps sell it, because you can show that, but also this way people don't think they're getting a different book when it's really a book they already have.
Yeah.
But again, making sure that it's clear that, in French or in Spanish or whatever, and don't forget your A+ content, and put it down there and show that it's available in different languages.
That's a very good point. Yeah. And the other thing that I just wanted to add, because it's one of the things that I made a mistake with when I first translated my book. You are so used to uploading your books in English to Amazon that I've completely forgot to tick the first drop down box when you upload your book. It's the language, and I completely overlooked it. And I uploaded a Spanish book and a German book, and it still said English.
Yeah.
And I had to unpublish them and upload them again. So just to make sure you don't overlook that, when you first upload your book, you have to tick the drop down for the languages, because it's so small and it's right at the beginning. You kind of, you can miss it
Overlook
easily. Yeah.
Well, especially if translating is not a big part of your business.
That's right. Yeah.
You don't even think of it. I mean, every book you've ever published has been in English, let's say,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're putting them in a different language. Make sure that you update that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other important point you made was the A+ content. That is, again, something you would have to get translated if there are any words. Obviously, you can just have pictures, but that's not ideal. So yeah, that all has to be translated as well. And
your book description.
And your book description. So that there is a lot of work in translating something, but I would say it's worth doing, definitely. Yeah. And you don't have to do every language, like you said.
Right.
It's just,
and you don't have to do them all at once either. You can start off with whatever is the, for your target audience, whatever you think is going to be the one that's going to be the most popular.
Yeah.
Here in the US, I would say my first go-to is always Spanish. And, that's always like, so if I'm translating into another language, Spanish is the first one I go for.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll have, it translated into multiple languages at once, but many times I just translate it into Spanish, see how that goes. And then I can take the royalties that come from that to help fund translating it into German or French.
And also I think every country hasn't got the same customs or the same, what's the word I'm looking for? Not everybody likes the same things in every country. So for example, journaling, this is just an example off the top of my head, but journaling is very big here in the UK and possibly in the US as well.
Right.
But I don't think it was that big a thing in Spain a few years back. I think now it's becoming a thing, but I noticed it wasn't a really popular. When I researched on Amazon Spain, it wasn't a big thing there.
Right.
Whereas now it's becoming that. So you have to research your book in that particular marketplace where you're going, because you have to see if it's even worth translating. It might not be in much demand, it might be something that's not done in that country or not popular in that country. So that's another thing that you need to take into account.
Right. But again, keep in mind that even if it's not big in that country, if there are, a good part of the population in your US or UK that isn't, where, for example, journaling is popular, then you still might want to consider it.
Yeah.
And don't not select the country that, so for example, Spain, don't deselect that, still put it in there, but just make sure that you have set proper expectations for yourself, that you're probably not going to sell as many there, even though it's in their native language, as you will elsewhere.
Absolutely. And I think, my non-translated books, my books in English, I publish onto all countries anyway.
Agreed.
Regardless of the type of book, I just do that because it actually adds up. When I
Mhm.
look at my statements when I get my money coming in from Amazon,
Right.
there are all these little payments from all these different countries:
Right.
Canada, Italy, Germany, Sweden,
Yeah.
Poland, New Zealand, well, Australia, wherever they come from. And individually, they're not a lot, but they do add up.
They add up.
So,
Right.
yeah. So it's actually quite a good idea to do that just for that reason alone. It's just to maximize your inventory and to get more people to see your books.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, there's no, I can't think of any good reason why you wouldn't. You know what I mean? It's free to do. It's free to add, to add it into every country. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as long as it's good quality, why not put it everywhere? Because like I said, your customers are potentially everywhere. So you want your books to be in as many places as possible to, like you said, to increase your visibility and better your chances of getting seen and getting your books purchased.
Yeah. And I know some people say, oh, it's a lot of work to translate something. Or, I mean, first of all, yes, it is, but then it's a lot of work to write a book. And
Right.
once it's written or once it's created, it's a lot easier then to translate it than to come up with the idea in the first place. So
Right.
there's the hard work is already done in a way. And yes, it is more work, but that's our job. That's what we
Right.
have to do.
And it's done once and that's it. Just
Mm,
like when you write it, well, once it's translated, it's translated.
yeah,
And, and it's something that is, you know, I hate to use the word passive, but once it's done and it's up there, it can sell for you without you having to rewrite it all over again.
yeah. That's absolutely that's the beauty of this business, I think, that
Yes, it
you can
is.
just create something once and there it is forever for people to buy. And it didn't even cost you any money to upload it.
Right,
So,
right. I mean,
yeah.
I have books that, I've been doing this almost a decade that are still selling for me that I did back then, which I know are nowhere near the best quality books that I've put out because they were my earlier ones, but they still sell month after month, year after year.
There you go.
And especially those books, I don't I don't run ads to them or anything, and I still see, like I said, month after month sales coming in from it. So yeah, it's you create it one time and I mean, it's up there for forever.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a good example for that as well. I didn't translate it. I wrote it originally in Spanish, and it was like a Bible study journal, with prompts, and
Hmm.
I published it to all territories. And I thought, I wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I was quite happy to do it, and I thought it was a nice book. Absolute crickets for about a whole year. Never sold one copy.
Right.
And I thought, is it worth doing? No, it's not worth doing this again. So I never did anything else with it. After about a year, for some reason, it started selling, and not just selling, but it was selling quite a lot of copies. And ever since then, it's been selling steadily. So I don't know what happened, why it didn't sell for a whole year and then suddenly it took off. But it kind of, I always think of that example when I feel that I've made a book and it's not selling straight away. I think doesn't matter. Maybe it'll sell in a year's
Right.
time, and the work is done and it's there. So it's another product that you've got on your shelf for people to look at. But yeah, I
Agreed.
always wondered why that was, and I don't know why.
Honestly, it could just come down to, maybe the right person found it and
Yeah,
thought it was amazing and shared it with their friends
shared
and,
it.
or shared it with their congregation or
Yeah,
whatever. And that's all
yeah.
it takes.
So definitely, I would say it's definitely worth doing books in different languages. Yeah.
No, I agree. And like I said, I don't necessarily think you should do it in every language, especially to begin with, but I would at least pick, you know, one language that you think it would benefit from and translate it in that. And that way you get familiar with the process and you can see, you know, what comes from it without, spending a whole bunch of money.
Mm. And maybe also see what the biggest marketplaces are. I mean, we know the
Right.
US is the biggest marketplace, But if that also includes Spanish speakers, then that's quite a big market, and that includes the Spanish market. The German Amazon market isn't, as a country, it's not as big, but as a market, it's actually very, very buoyant and very busy, and that's a good market to publish in.
Right.
I'm not quite sure what the Polish market is, for example, so I'm not really publishing there so much. But if you speak Polish and you want to translate your books, it's absolutely worth doing, because there are Polish speakers in other countries. There are lots here in the UK, lots in Spain, lots, so like we said, there are speakers of different languages in every country, so it's definitely worth publishing worldwide.
And that being said, one thing that we kind of barely touched on, but it's something that should be mentioned, is competition. You know, where you may actually you have it translated in Spanish, let's say, and it may outsell the original because there's less competition for it.
Yeah.
Because like we said, it is work. It's extra work than what the average self-publisher is going to do. And so having a book that even people that are, bilingual, if they see a book that's in their native language, they're way more likely to pick that up. And so if you are publishing in whatever niche, do a search and see how many are in Spanish. And you may see one that the BSRs for bestseller ranks are probably higher, more consistently higher, because the competition is lower. And because the competition is lower, it'd be easier for your book to be visible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another really good point. And I mean, and just even from the point of view that the more products you have, it's as simple as that. I'm not saying quantity over quality here, but
Agreed.
But the more products you have, if they're good quality, the better, and that's why it's important that your translation is of really good quality as well, as it should be, as your original language book should be. So it's all about creating quality books.
Yeah, I could not agree more.
In quantity, maybe.
Well, and one thing that, people are, a lot of people, they want to put out more books, but maybe they just can't think of anything. This is a great way to increase your, like you said, your options, or
your inventory,
your inventory,
yeah,
that without having to rewrite something, without having to write something from scratch, having it translated. So now, instead of having one book, you now have 2 books or 3 books, but it's all really, you wrote a story you wrote once.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I compare this to my previous businesses all the time, because it's so much better. If you're selling an actual product, you're selling mugs, for example, you have to buy not just one mug, and you might only sell one, you might not sell any, but you have to buy 20,000 mugs because that's the minimum order quantity. You have to buy a certain amount of mugs. So you've spent money there. Then you have to import them. Then that you're spending money there again. Then you have to store them something. Unless you can store them in your house, again, you have to spend money. So running a business is all about spending money before you've even earned a penny. And Amazon KDP is so different in that respect, because you can create products for next to nothing. If you have to pay a translator, that's a minimal cost compared to what it would cost you to put a product out there. If it's not a book, if it's a different product, it costs money to put a product on a platform like Amazon or any other platform.
And again, they're letting us use their massive platform, their massive traffic, and they don't charge us. So
that's the beauty of it. And I think sometimes we get too caught up in, oh, how much is this going to cost? How much? But every business has costs that,
it does.
If you're treating it as a business, then that is just part of it. If you're doing it as a side hustle, and you want to start off and see if it works for you, you don't necessarily have to go and spend money on a translation. Just do it in your native language and see how it goes. And then once you're starting to earn, then you can invest. Because it's really investment, isn't it? It's like you're investing in the future of your business by having it professionally translated.
Agreed. And I think, especially if you've been getting sales and you're starting to get some royalties in there, I really do challenge you to pick one language, pick one book, one language, and get it translated and see how well it does. Because I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised, and because I know I was when I saw that. I mean, I have books where obviously I wrote it in English, and the translated versions outsell the English version because, like I said, the competition is so much smaller.
Yeah,
because it's extra work, and a lot of people don't want to do it. Many people don't even think to do it.
Yeah.
They think, oh, I can't translate. I don't speak Spanish, so I can't have a Spanish version. So hopefully, if there's nothing else that you take away from this episode, it's to know that the possibility is there. It's there are multiple ways to get it done, and again, always focus on the quality. But I really think that and just like you would do with anything, do the research ahead of time, and like I said, see how many in whatever niche you're in, how many Spanish books are there in that niche, and I think you'd be surprised at the BSRs and the competition.
Absolutely. I was surprised, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be that good, So yeah, I can definitely, the answer to the question, should we translate our books, I would say is a big yes. It's a yes from me.
Yeah, it's a yes. Yeah, it's a yes for me. You've got 2 yeses. Well, this has been another great mastermind area. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought, regardless of what language you're in. Until next time, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Colby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.